Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Let's go ahead and get this show on the road. So, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dave, and today we are going to be talking about how to learn English using, actually not just English, because we're going to be talking about Portuguese as well. So Portuguese and English, actually you could apply these principles to any language that you wanted to and be able to develop your skills using only two tools. There's only two things that you need to learn English or Portuguese or any other language and develop all the skills necessary to speak English. So let me just make sure everything's set up right here and y'all can hear me okay. Give me a shout out, say hello if you're here live, listening, watching. So this is actually my first time streaming out to Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, LinkedIn, and I think that's it. So if you're on watching us, say hello. I look forward to hearing from you. Okay, so we're going to be talking about how to improve your English skills using an integrated learning system. So I'm actually going to jump out of this screen here where you see this screen, and let me just double check this here. Hang on. Give me a second. All right. Very good. Jump over here to this screen so I can write integrated learning system, what I like to call an ILS, or in Portuguese I call a Sistema de Estudo Integrado, which stands for, oops, can't even spell straight, Integrated Learning System. All right, as you'll see, it's really simple. Nothing complicated at all. All right, so what we want to do is help you improve your English skills or Portuguese skills, or if you're learning another language, whatever language you're learning. But all you need are two things. You don't need fancy courses, fancy equipment, fancy material. You don't need anything out of the ordinary. Children learn their mother tongue by listening and speaking, right? So as an adult, obviously you're not learning your mother tongue. You can rationalize, you can think, you can accelerate the learning process, and so that's what I want to show you how to do right now using simply two things. And what are those? Two things that you need are, let's go ahead and write this here, two tools. That way we can document all this. Two tools to learn and improve. See if I can spell right. Dave, come on. Your language skills. That can be English, Portuguese, or whatever other language you want. So the first thing you need is text, right? And the second thing you need is audio. So if you have text and audio, you can study and improve your language skills. It's really simple. This isn't complicated at all. So this is actually one of the ways that I improved my Portuguese language skills by increasing my vocabulary reading is extremely important. So as you use these tools, and we're going to show you how to do that, you're going to develop all major skills. Develop, can I spell here? It's hard for me to talk and write at the same time, but we're going to help you develop your skills. All right, so we have the primary skills, which are reading, writing, we have listening, and speaking. Okay? So reading and writing are usually pretty easy for language students to develop their skills in these areas. Listening and speaking is where language students usually have more difficulty, and we'll talk more about why that is later. But let's continue on here. And then we have the sub-skills, which are vocabulary, and I like to include expressions as part of this here because it's really learning vocabulary but chunks of vocabulary together. So we'll call those expressions, which aren't normally included in the sub-skills, but I do just because I like them and I think they're fun to teach. And I know students look at them differently than regular vocabulary learning. Then we have grammar, right? Learning grammar structures. And we have pronunciation. So the question is, David, how can I develop all the primary skills and sub-skills necessary for speaking English or Portuguese or another language fluently and efficiently with only my text and audio? So let me give you a little bit of background here. Several years back, well, let me step way back. When I first started learning Portuguese, hello, Mr. Luizinho. I'm doing good. How about yourself? Just saw your messages here. Great, great. Nice to hear from you. Glad you're here. Thanks for watching. How you doing today? How are you? Okay, so continuing on here, what happens is that I learned Portuguese, so then people started asking me to speak English, and I spent several years teaching, and I developed all these theories about learning a new language. But after a while, I got to thinking to myself, is what I'm teaching the best way for students to learn? Because it's been a while since I learned Portuguese, and you know, I had a lot of theories, but we need to put those theories into practice. All right, Mr. Luizinho, I am Brazilian. All right, good morning, Mr. Luizinho. Bom dia. Como vai? How are you? All right, I'm doing great today. Nice to hear from you. So, I started studying French to apply all these different hypotheses and theories that I had about learning a new language. And this was something that I was kind of doing before, but I took this to a whole nother level. And this is one of the main things that helped me develop in my language learning skills. So basically, like I said, you need these different tools, and you can get these in a variety of formats. You say, David, where can I get audio and text to develop all these skills, and how am I going to apply it? So those are two things that we're going to talk about. What can you use? And another question, how to apply it. It's really simple. Like I said, nothing complicated here, no big secret. But I think if you start to do this, it will help you improve your English and your Portuguese skills. All right, so first question, what can you use? There's actually a variety of tools you can use. Anything, like I said, with audio and text that you can accompany. So we have a variety of options. The very first one would be, let's step back a little bit. ESL lessons, right? Because most English lessons come with audio and text. So you can use material from other courses that you already have, material from previous courses that you took, material from, let's say, material that you've bought, audio courses that you've taken, programs that you have, English courses online. There's a lot of really good websites and tools that you can use, right? So you could start off with your English lessons. Number 2, podcasts. All right, podcasts, you have podcasts freely available online. So you can listen to podcasts and follow along with the transcripts, right? Because if the podcast has a transcript, a written, the text version of what was said, which a lot of podcasts provide, you have both the audio and the text. What else can you use? Music, right? Music is a great way to develop your English skills because you have the audio of the music and you have the lyrics. So the music with the lyrics, right? You also have movies. Movies and series. We'll bundle those together here because they have the subtitles, right? So you can listen to the audio, you can watch the movie, and while you're listening, you have the text below that you can follow along with to see how the words are written. You can look those words up if you need to, see how the sentences are structured. A lot you can do with that. What else can you use? Audiobooks. I love audiobooks. You have Kindle Unlimited, right? I'll put that in here just so that you can see that. Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited, right? I'll add the link there in the description of the videos below later so you can see where those are at. Kindle Unlimited is a really nice tool because, let's see here if I can find it. There we go. We'll just go right to my shop because I've got the link right here. So you can just go to amazon.com shop/Dave Bailey. This is a place where I've organized links to resources that you can, The audio is very low, is it? Let me check my audio here. See if I can improve it, increase it. Let me double check and make sure I'm on the right audio. Just one moment. Okay, I'll try talking louder. See my audio output feed. Doot, 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 doot. How's that? Oh, that's not what I wanted. That was my other camera. Let's see here. Just to make sure that configure video, configure crossbar, okay, everything looks okay there. Okay, so I'll try to talk louder. Sorry about that, the audio being low there. Thanks for the feedback. So we'll continue on here. So, like I said, I've got the link here. There's some great resources on Amazon. You've got Amazon Prime Movies, Amazon Prime Music. You've also got the Kindle Unlimited, where you can pay one price to read all the books you want, and there are a lot of audiobooks inside the Kindle Unlimited. I think there's there's millions of books you can read, but there's at least 3,000 books that have audio with them. So you have the audio and you have the text to read along with. So you can start a free trial. You think you get like 30 days free to test it out, and you can use audiobooks. Audiobooks are a great way to learn English because they're fun, right? I've even created an audiobook for my students. So those are other options. Also, we have what? Talking about audiobooks, we have the Bible, right? The Bible is free. So you can read the Bible in English, in your mother tongue, or in Portuguese, whatever language you're learning in your mother tongue. And you have the audio version to listen to. So for example, if you use the NIV version, the New International Version, you can have it in English, your mother tongue, and there's the audio version that you can listen to. And then, of course, there are mini stories, right? Mini stories are a great way to improve your English as well. There's something that I use with my students a lot. We create mini stories in class. There's mini stories on my YouTube channel that you can listen to. So you've got the text, you've got the audio, and you can practice. So these are what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways that you can practice your English using these two tools, text and audio, okay? So you can use English lessons, podcasts, music, movies, audiobooks, the Bible, and mini stories. And we can give you examples with each of those if you have questions. So if you guys have specific questions or some of these resources that you already use, let me know in the comments, because then I can talk about those specifically, all right? So you can write sample sentences there in the comments as well. All right, so let's continue on here. How to apply the integrated learning system using text and audio with any of these resources. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is step number 1, read the text. Now, this isn't the only way. This is just one format where you could go through and focus on each of these specific skills. But I like to start with vocabulary. Vocabulary, for me, when I am learning a new language is key because, all right, when you want to learn a new language, you have to learn the words. Because if you don't know the vocabulary word that someone, let's say for example, you're talking to someone and they say a word that you don't understand, you won't understand it if you don't know that vocabulary word, right? It's a given. Number 2, because if you want to speak and you don't know the right word, then you won't be able to express yourself. So vocabulary is key. To learn a new language, you have to constantly be increasing and expanding your vocabulary. That's number 1. All right, so read the text and underline the words that you don't understand. All right, that's number 1. So go through the text, read it, and underline any words you don't know. Don't worry right now about using your dictionary, because what can happen is you read through the text, you see key words used several times, over and over and over. And what happens is as you do that, as you read see those key words over and over in the context, sometimes you assimilate those naturally. You don't necessarily have to go look up the meaning. Now, after you go through this, if you still don't know the meaning of the word, then you can go back through and look them up in your dictionary or try to understand them better, right? But initially, just read through the text and underline all the words that you don't understand. There's different ways you can underline them, right? I like to underline the words that I don't understand. So for example, if it's a word that I've never seen before, you might underline it. If it's a word that you know you've seen but you don't understand how it's used in context, you could highlight it. So if a word that you know you've seen, you're kind of familiar with it, but you're not sure, you could make it bold, so you can highlight words different ways depending on what, how you relate to that word. So this is just a way to go through, make sure, see how much you understand of the text. You can analyze it, say, okay, I understood 50% of this text. I understood 80%, depending on your level of English, right? So let's take an example here. Where can we get a good example? Let's go to uversion.com. This will just be quick and simple. If I had planned this out before, I could have organized some text specifically for you. And we can do that later. We can go through each of these type of texts and do an example with them. But let's start off with the Bible, just because it's freely available. We have access to it right here online, and I can give you some context, showing you some examples, for example, when I was studying French. So my internet's kind of slow here today. It looks like I'm not logged in. So okay, that's not going to be a very good example. Let's just continue on here. Later I'll find some examples for you and we can do another live so that I can explain this for you better. Hang on. Maybe I know what the problem is here. Why the audio is low. Let me see if I can figure this out. Come on. There we go. Nope, that's not the problem. Huh. All right, I thought maybe I understood why we were having trouble with the low audio, but okay. So continuing on. So let's say you take a text. I don't have one here handy. I should have gotten that for you earlier, but we can do that in another live. Anyways, just go through and underline all the words that you don't understand in the context, okay? And then I can give you more examples of that later. Number two, as you do that, you're developing your reading skills, right? So actually, maybe we should just we'll make these two separate steps here. Number one, read the text and see how much you understand. Okay? So step number two is going to be, we'll actually classify each of these skills that we're focusing on here. Reading, read the text. Doing the live consumes a lot of bandwidth, so it slows my computer down. Need to get a faster computer. Okay, so step number two is doing the vocabulary. I'm kind of thinking through this process live as I'm doing this, just explaining things that I've done and things that I've seen that have helped my students, right? So, number one, read through the text several times, see how much you understand, and as you do, underline the words you don't understand, focusing on the vocabulary, all right? Number three, after you do that a few times, then listen. So we're focusing on your listening skills here. I should have just written those up here, but they're in a different order. These are, like I said, these are the primary skills, right? And these are the sub-skills. So I want to keep those in order, so we'll just redo them down here. Listening. So after you've read through it, seen the words, you understand the context better, then go through and listen to the audio. Follow along. There are a couple of software tools you can use. For using audio, I like a program called VLC. Okay? VLC has two specific things that you can use, which are, let's delete that there. Number one, A-B looping. Okay, A-B looping, which just simply means that you don't have to listen to the audio all the way through. You can select point A, listen to it, select point B, and it'll just loop through that section of the audio that you're focusing on, that you're studying. So if you're focusing on a single sentence or a paragraph, you can just have the program automatically loop that section for you. Very good tool when you're studying, because you don't want to listen through the whole text every time. You can focus on a specific section. And number two, you have the option to slow down the audio. So slow the audio down to 80 or 75% if that helps you understand the audio better, especially the first two times you listen to it. So as you listen slowly, one, it helps you distinguish the sounds, and number two, it also helps you, gives you more time to process what you're hearing, for your brain to think through that. All right? So, listen to the text several times. 3 to 5 times. Okay? So, now you've done your reading, you've focused on developing your reading skills, you've focused on seeing the words that you don't understand, you focus on your listening. Remember, what happens is a lot of times students, especially English students that I've worked with, sometimes they can read and write a lot, especially like internet technicians, programmers, doctors. They read huge texts with very technical vocabulary. They understand everything, which is great, but when it comes to speaking, they don't understand. They don't know how to speak, right? Or if they listen to someone, they don't understand what they hear. And it's simply because it's a skill that they haven't developed. So for example, it's like going to you go to the gym and you work out just one arm, right? Your arm's going to get strong, but the other one's going to get weak. So the same thing with your English lessons. You have to develop all these skills together simultaneously, because if you don't, you're going to become very strong in reading and writing, but you're going to be weak in other skills. Hey, Mr. Adriano, how you doing? Good to see you here. Mr. Adriano is my big friend. All right, I'm very fond of you too, Mr. Adriano. Thanks. Good to see you on here. So, that's why it's important to focus on all of these skills simultaneously. It's important to make sure that you're developing all the skills together. Because if you only focus on one or two, you'll be good in those areas but weak in others. So, for example, when students take a level test, they might see that in their grammar skills or their reading skills, they're a high intermediate, maybe a level B2, but in their speaking or listening, they're a low intermediate, level B1. So it's important to develop all of these skills together. All right, so you've developed your listening. Now it's important to go through and as I'm going to call this grammar, but this isn't really grammar. This isn't that you're studying the grammar. This is more like focus on the sentence structures. Okay? Focus on the sentence structures. What does that mean? All right? As you're reading the phrases in your text and you're listening, you're going to see phrases that you don't understand. For example, there's a couple of things here. Let me go ahead and write those down before I forget them. So we have the structure of the language, which confuses students. We have the verb conjugations. And we have, I'll fix that error in a minute, and we have the question words, for example. All right, so what happens here? Number one, structure. A lot of students get confused when they're studying English because they say, oh, David, English is backwards, right? Especially Portuguese students. In Portuguese, we say the bird blew because the adjective comes after the noun, and in English, the adjective comes before the noun. So students say, oh, David, the language is backwards, right? So focus on how the words are structured, how they're organized, because as you read and listen, you're going to learn and develop. You're going to learn how to structure your sentences correctly, all right? Then, um, as you do that as well, you're going to see different words used in different ways. So for example, I was reading one time a text and I saw a word that was very similar, but it was used differently. I said, oh, that must be a verb. So I went and looked it up, and sure enough, it was a verb that was conjugated in different ways. So you say, David, how do you study grammar? Do I have to sit down and memorize the grammar rules? Okay, it's important. I don't want to say that studying grammar is not important. I know that English teachers often go to extreme. One English teacher says, oh, study grammar, and others say, no, don't study grammar. You have to have a balance. Think about how you learned your mother tongue. How did you learn to speak your mother tongue, right? As a child, you listened. Later, you began to speak. Your mother and your father corrected you. Later, you went to school to learn how to read and write. And then, after you learned how to read and write, you studied the grammar. But you studied grammar after you already spoke. So what happens is a lot of times when English students start with grammar, later when they want to speak, they have a mental block because they always want to remember the grammar rules and they're afraid to make mistakes. So, studying grammar is important. When you're beginning, study grammar on an as-need basis, right? So you're learning something, you have a question, go look it up. But don't worry about memorizing all the rules. Later, once you speak, you can study the grammar rules and understand how it applies to that specific context. Because if you try to learn the grammar rules first and you don't speak yet, then you're going to know the rule, but you won't really know how to apply it. So it's important that everything you do, it's like anything, right? You have to learn and practice. If you're going to play the guitar, you have to study the guitar, and then you have to practice. If you just read a book about playing the guitar, you won't know how to play the guitar, right, correctly. Excuse me. So you have to do both things. So it's important just to get that out there so you don't get confused, because I know some students are afraid to study grammar and others focus mostly on the grammar. So just have a balance in your English learning. And also question words. As you read, you'll see how those words are used, how to form your own questions and how to answer them, because asking questions and answering questions is a big part of language learning, right? Number 5. So we've done grammar, we've done, actually, let's see here. We've got, let's just double check. We've done reading, listening, vocabulary, and grammar. All right, let's talk about, we'll include expressions here. Now I've messed up all my numbers. I forgot about expressions earlier. Expressions are important because they're chunks of language, right? Let's say that you know a word in English, but you see it used in an expression, an idiomatic expression, or some kind of phrase, and you don't understand it. So when you learn new words, it's important to learn how to use them in context with the idiomatic expressions, the phrasal verbs. There's a good example. Let's say you learn the word get. Get means to pick something up, to go fetch it, right? But then you see it used in another context with a preposition like get up, get down, get in, get on, get over, right? Get over, used in the context, means you're heartbroken, someone made you sad, but that means to stop being sad about that situation. You have to overcome it. So you know the word get means to fetch something, but in this context, it doesn't make sense. So that's why it's important to learn the words in context, right? So we'll just put learn words in context. All right. Then we'll focus on your pronunciation. Remember, like I said, this is just one way that you could go through this process. You've got your text, you've got your audio, you've read through it, you've underlined the words and expressions you don't know, you've listened to the audio, You have some questions about the grammar, so you go research it to understand why it's used in that specific context or how that verb is conjugated. And then we're going to focus on developing your pronunciation skills. All right? So how do you do that? You listen to the audio. Remember, if you're using your A-B looping in your program like VLC, then you can simply loop a specific section of the audio. You listen to it. When it's finished, that phrase, you pause it. You repeat what you just heard, and then you let it loop back and listen to it again. Now, as you do that, each time you listen to it, you say it, and then you listen to it again, then you're going to correct your pronunciation. Okay? So if you say the word, and then you hear it and you understand that it's different, you're going to correct your own pronunciation. This is really good because you can develop your own pronunciation skills, reduce your accent simply by using these tools. So you listen, repeat, listen again, and correct yourself based on what you heard when your pronunciation is off. This is really interesting. I met a guy many years ago in São Paulo here in Brazil his English was almost perfect. I thought he was a native speaker. He said he wasn't, so I asked him how long he lived abroad. He said he never lived abroad, so I asked him how he learned English, and this is what he did. He watched those old John Wayne movies, the old westerns. He would, at that time, on those VHS videotapes, and he did this very process. And through that process of correcting his own pronunciation, never having lived abroad, he perfected his English. I asked him, I said, how long did you live abroad? He said, I've never been abroad, never lived abroad. He said, to say I've never been to the U.S., I went there, I spent 2 weeks on a trip, but that was it. So even if you don't have the opportunity to live in another country, you can still improve your pronunciation. You can reduce your English accent by doing this right here. So listen, repeat what you hear, listen again, and then correct your pronunciation, right? Now, there are tools that can help you do this. For example, there are tools where you can listen to something, you record your pronunciation, and if you say it correctly, it'll show you, it'll be green. If you pronounce it incorrectly, it'll be red. So there are software tools that can help you correct your pronunciation. But if you have audio and text, you can do this on your own, and it's a very effective way to improve your language skills. All right, number 7, moving along here, we're going to focus on your writing. This is the fun part. So you're going to transcribe what you hear. Transcribe, let's say, your audio. All right? Now, how are you going to do that? How are you going to transcribe your audio? You've got the text there, so put it away. You can do this right away, or you can do it the next day, right? You've been studying, listening to that text, practice your pronunciation. Put it aside. Later on the next day or whenever you're going to study again, come back. Don't look at the text. Just listen to the audio and write what you hear. This is very powerful. It's a great way to improve your listening. Number 2, correct your own writing and spelling. And number 3, helps you reinforce everything you learned previously, right? Because whenever you learn something, it's important to review it so you don't forget it. So that's why I say, study. If you have 45 minutes to study, then study. Then set it aside, and later when you come back, this will be a very good review. Now, I know students who are afraid to do this. They say, David, I'm going to make a mistake. If I make mistakes, I'm going to learn wrong. No. Listen, here's what happens. As a teacher, I give my students a homework exercise, right? My students do the exercise. They give it back to me. I correct it, and return their exercise. What do most students do? Many students just put it in their backpack or throw it in the trash, or some even leave it in the classroom. So I correct their homework and they don't even look at it to see their mistakes. Is that going to help them learn? No, not at all. So if you correct your own mistakes, you're going to learn. It's automatic feedback. So listen to the audio. Use your A-B looping, right? Select a phrase, A-B loop. Listen to it slowly several times and write that phrase. A-B loop the next phrase and just keep on. If you've got 15 minutes to do this exercise, then spend 15 minutes. Transcribe as much as you can. All right? After you're done transcribing, go back and get your original text, the transcription, right? If you're listening to a podcast, go get the transcription. If you're watching a movie, turn on the subtitles. If you're reading an audiobook, go get the written version. If you're reading the Bible, go open up the version in the language you're learning. If you're learning English, that would be English. If you're learning Portuguese, it would be Portuguese. If you're learning another language, that would be another language. So transcribe your audio. Once you're done, correct. Okay, let's not say correct. Let's say compare your text with the original. This is very powerful because when you listen to the audio, all right, you're going to think you heard one thing, but when you write it down and compare it, you're going to see they said something else. You're going to say, all right, I didn't understand that correctly. You listen to it again, and then you understand what they're really saying. So this will help you learn to differentiate the sounds better, especially when you're a beginning to low intermediate student. This is very powerful to develop your listening skills. Secondly, you're going to correct your own writing. You're going to learn how to spell the words correctly. You might have understood the phrase, but you spelled the words wrong. So as you go back and you compare them, you're going to see, I spelled this word wrong. This is how you spell it. I forgot the accent here. I forgot this word here. I put the wrong letter here. It's an S instead of a Z. So you correct your own exercises, and that feedback is very important. Just like a child, right? When a child speaks, they make a mistake. The mother corrects the child. A teacher can correct you. But if you do this process on your own, you don't even need a teacher, right? You can correct your own mistakes, right? I'm not saying don't freak out, English teachers. I'm not saying teachers are bad. I'm just saying that some of this stuff you can do on your own. A teacher doesn't have to correct every single mistake you make. Because if you do that, all right, you can use your teacher to coach you, motivate you, encourage you when you get stuck. Your teacher can help you get unstuck. But if you can study on your own, my students who study on their own, all right, Follow says he can't hear pretty well. Follow, I'm sorry. My audio, I've looked at it and I'm not sure what the problem is. Let's try that. Does that help? Is that better? I'm looking at my volume controls. All my volume controls are turned up. So I'll have to play around with it later to figure out what the problem is. So, man, bummer. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, I'll continue on with this. I'll finish up and then I'll try to check that out later, see if I can resolve the problem before our next live. Okay, so compare your text with the original, learn from your own mistakes, and then you're going to focus on your speaking skills, right? Speaking skills. You can do that, number one, by talking to someone else and summarize what you studied, right? So if you watched a movie, for example, you can go tell someone what you studied, right? You can tell them about that movie you watched. If you listen to an audiobook, you can tell them about the story. If you studied an English lesson, you can tell them what you learned. So that way, by applying each of these skills, the primary skills and the sub-skills, to your text and audio, right? All you need is text and audio. You can develop all the skills that you need to improve your English. All right. So, do you guys have any questions? If you have questions, you can type them there in the comment box. And I'm going to go ahead, we'll wrap this up so I can try to figure out what the problem, the issue is with my audio. And then later we can do another live, and hopefully you guys will hear me better. All right. Do you have any questions? And next time I will bring some text that we can work with, so that way I can give you some specific examples. Or better yet, if you guys have text that you want me to use, let me know, and we can use your texts as well. So, I hope this live was useful. I hope you guys enjoyed it, even though the audio was low. And I will try to find a way to resolve that for next time. Okay? So if you have any questions, actually let me try a couple of different things here. Let me switch to the webcam, see how that is. Is that better? Can you hear me better there? Does that resolve the problem? Is the audio better? Is it clearer? Because I have different audio configurations for each of these formats. So we can actually shut these things off, turn other ones on, and see if one of these formats has better audio. Maybe I misconfigured something, and we can narrow down the problem here. So let's change to another format. Da-dun, da-dun. How's that? Is this format better? Can you guys hear me better here? Maybe this is the problem. Or, using my second backup camera, maybe this will resolve the problem here. Okay, anyways, so that's it, guys, for today, talking about our integrated learning system. Very powerful process for developing your language skills, learning a new language, and we will talk about this more later, okay? So y'all have a great day, a good weekend, and God bless. Bye-bye.